Previously on 1 Mile More, I picked up this decrepit old Yamaha Phazer for $400 and resurrected it back to life. And while I was at it, of course I had to customize it a little as well. After barely riding the sled last year, it was time to bring it back into the garage and start all over again. The first thing we'll be tackling is getting rid of these ugly, heavy steel skis. I'll be replacing them with some lightweight plastic ones. I actually got these things for $5 at a swap meet, so you can imagine they're not exactly mint. Ugh. There are several reasons why these skis were so cheap. First of which, this handle right here, I had to buy off of eBay because it didn't have one. And they're a little bit broken up, and the previous owner ran these things until there was almost nothing left of the carbides. I've replaced them. You can see the evidence of how long they were run, but there's still plenty enough left for me to use. Already got the nut off of the backside here. It's resisting me. I suspect that the bolt is stuck in a bushing inside of the spindle. Hey, there we go. I assume that's a bolt stuck inside of a bushing. So let's see if we can heat that thing up and get it out of there. We can replace a bolt easy enough, but we're gonna want that bushing. That didn't work well at all. I thought it was going to be brilliant. Yay! Win! Now a moment of truth. How far off are these apparently skidoo skis from fitting on here? We're gonna need some bushings. And as far as the stoppers on the bottom, might have to get a little bit creative with that too, so the skis aren't flopping all over the place. To mount the skis, I've got these 10mm bolts, but when we go to put them in the skis, that's a big size difference. I assume that these are supposed to have bushings in here to kind of preserve the plastic. So I'm gonna have to fabricate some somehow. I went digging through my scrap metal and I found this 1/2 inch thick aluminum that should be just about the perfect thickness. Then found this hole saw where the plug should have almost a perfect outside diameter to fit in there. So then we'll just have to drill out the center hole of the plug to 10mm. Well, all the machinists out there will have to forgive me. This is my bushing. It's pretty crude, but I think it'll be good enough. I need to add 1 washer to get the right thickness of this flange here. That should fit pretty good. See, look at that. Not too bad. It's not great, but it'll be good enough. Now these skis are pretty wide here compared to the spindle, so you can see I've got all this sideways play. So I could space the ski out so it's wider for more stability, but I kind of want to be able to lean the thing and carve in the deep snow if we ever get enough. So I'm going to put all the spacing on the inside. We'll put a washer on the inside here. Now on this side, to take up the gap, I happen to find these machine bushings. They are perfect, and they're aluminum. Oh, look at that. It's just so perfect. There we go. All right. So our fit here is pretty darn good. As far as play in there, that's pretty tight. But we've got some interference right there where this rib seems to be hitting the spindle. So we're going to have to clearance that so that the ski can point upward. So I figured it's a good idea to see what stock is supposed to be for articulation of these skis. Granted, there's a rubber stopper in there, but this is kind of how it acts. So now, how does it fit in this one? It looks like we're going to have to remove a lot of material for the stopper to sit where it's supposed to be. I tell you, just bolting on skis from one sled to another is not as simple as it seems. Here you can see all the material that I took out. There's the original. There's that. Basically, I went as far as I could before I started hitting the bottom of the ski. That pops down in there. Now we've got the rubber stopper put in place and the ski bolted on, and it looks like our action here is pretty similar to the stock ski. Another thing I just noticed was if I line up the skis with the bolt holes here, you look at the back, holy smokes, these plastic skis are way longer. If you turn it and you go over bumps and stuff, this is significantly higher. So is that going to be hitting stuff and scuffing everything up? Now, one of my main goals of doing all of this is to save weight. I want this thing to be as lightweight as possible. And though it wouldn't lose a lot of weight by nipping this off, it seems like it might just be a good idea. It just seems kind of unnecessary, and especially if this is going to be interfering and hitting the belly pan. So maybe just to be safe, I'll go halfway. This is where we're at for length. Guess I went a little bit under halfway. Here's what we cut off. But let's see what kind of weight difference we have here. One thing to note is that I found that this thing really fills up with mud. I cleaned most of it out of there. That would also add a bit of weight, get that all full of ice or dirt. So you can see this wear bar is also down to its last breath. So that also is a weight savings for right now. Call that 9. And our modified plastic ski that has a full wear bar on it. Looks like it's right around 5 pounds. Wow. So that's 8 pounds off the front of the sled with the 2 plastic skis on there. I like that. And now I want to try to fix this brake. I'm going to start by drilling some 16th inch holes and stitch this together a little bit with some welding wire. Now, I have never done this before, but my thought was that the wire would hold the brake together while I used a crappy soldering iron, a propane torch, and scraps of the ski that I just cut off of it for filler material to sort of weld it back together. Here's after round 2. I think it's kind of penetrating because you can see the area around the brake moving. Can't be any worse than it was. Well, this is a point where I'm going to call it good enough. It is really pretty strong, I think. It seems to be. But to be honest, I just put so much time into these skis and I've had enough. At this point, you can imagine I was thinking I probably should have just spent a little more money and got some better skis. If that's what you would do, well, I would not argue against it. Actually, at this point, I wouldn't argue against spending a little more money and getting a better snowmobile. Because as you can see here, this side fought me even more than the other one. Well, the shock didn't explode, but I probably didn't do it much good. I was wondering how smart it was to be superheating all this with the torch. I tell you what, the whole thing got awfully hot. We'll see if it holds the fluids in when I start riding it, or if the seals are completely shot now. Oh man. Removing the bolt from the bushing on this side also was much harder. And as you can see, the bushing is a little bit bent and almost destroyed. Well, the skis are done. Finally got the other one on there. I was able to reuse that bushing after sanding on it a little bit and made it work. Now it's time to turn our attention to the back half. I do have some bad bearings in this little carrier. That bearing is pretty much frozen. The rest of them don't feel horrible, although these ones, the bearing is spinning on the shaft. So I'll probably get a whole bunch of new bearings. Now, since getting the Phazer, I have found that these things have quite the following, and like 95% of the people are putting long, aggressive tracks on them, and it looks really cool. However, in these parts, we're lucky to have a foot of snow for any length of time, and these things only put out in the mid-50s for horsepower. So I just have a hard time justifying going that route. My idea is to make this thing as lightweight as possible and to make as good of use of the limited power that I possibly can. I am, however, going to upgrade the track. These stock ones are about as aggressive as a kitten. And at a local swap meet for, I think, 50 bucks, I got this. According to the interwebs, I can get away with an 1.25 inch paddle before having to put smaller drivers on here to make clearance, which might happen in the future. And while this track may be a little rough around the edges, I think it'll be appropriate for what I have in mind. Apparently painting the exhaust was not such a hot idea. I did use high temp paint, but apparently I didn't prep it well enough. Yuck. Jeez. Get out of the way. There we go. Oh, like butter. Oh yeah, I think that's a keeper. Should I replace it while I'm in here? I don't know. There. Simple. I figured might as well weigh these two tracks and see if there's much difference. Now it is worth noting that the stock one does have these metal cleats on there, so that'll add a little bit. 37.9 pounds. 39. Looks like that little bit of rubber weighs 1.1 pound more. Can you imagine what a 151 with a 2-inch paddle must weigh? I'm a little surprised that Yamaha doesn't have grease fittings on these major pivot points. And as you can see, they're pretty crusty. Wow, yeah. Now check this out. It's a little note. With these things, apparently without grease fittings, you got to pull this stuff out and lubricate them at some point. Since this aluminum rod had so much material that had flaked and corroded off of it, there's a bit of play in there. Oh my goodness, that's horrible. Maybe in the future I'll be changing this all out with some late model suspension anyway. Now that I have the suspension pivots all cleaned up and greased really well, it's time to replace the Hyfax. It is down to the minimum. Now let's see how much the new ones fight going on. Oh. Oh. Well, that wasn't so bad getting that far. Nice. Tell me when I get to the other end. Seems like I have to cut these off usually. Not these ones. That's nice. Careful. There's not a lot of threads in there and it's aluminum. Don't strip it. My bearings came today.
So I was hoping that the new bearings would take care of this, but they didn't. So you can see here when I spin this, like, oh, everything seems fine. But if you really flick it, you see that? We don't want that spinning on the shaft. That'll wear it away. What I'm gonna do is just take a center punch.
And it only took 4 punches for the bearing to require being pressed into position.
My brother says that he thinks I suffer from PTPE, prone to polish everything. You might be right, because I've been looking forward to doing something about these wheels. Ooh, corrosion. So we went from this to this. Hey! With this being cast aluminum, the surface was kind of rough, so I hit it up with 220 on the old orbital sander, and from there, touched it up with a little bit of steel wool, and that's where I'm gonna stop. I don't wanna polish it so it looks like chrome, because that would just be too blingy. I guess I'm a detail kind of guy.
That's what turns me on about you. Your attention to detail.
Well, I think I'm done screwing around with these wheels. Back ones turned out like that. I think they look a bit better. Would you guys have screwed around with something like that? Sometimes I question myself. But if you think this was stupid, wait till you see what I'm going to do next. Now, I couldn't help but notice when I was tearing this thing apart that all these spacers in between these back wheels are pretty heavy duty steel. And that just seems unnecessary. And I just happened to pick up this tubing of aluminum. And wouldn't you know it, it's like a direct replacement for this steel. And it's not like it's high horsepower. So I'm going to replace all these spacers with aluminum. Here we have our heavy original steel spacers and our lightweight race sled aluminum spacers. Let's see what kind of difference we have in weight. Let's start with the steel pieces here, 14.4 ounces. And our aluminum pieces, 5.1. Nice, less than half. That's a start. Have you noticed all the holes that are machined into a modern snowmobile suspension? How many are in this thing? 1, 2, none. It's time to make some speed holes.
Hey, what are all these holes?
These are speed holes to make the car go faster.
Oh yeah, speed holes.
But before we put this thing on a diet, let's see what the baseline weight is. 52.4. This is just a rough mock-up of what I'm thinking. Now, after looking at other designs, I think I'm just going to keep it right to the areas where there's more material up above here. At first, I was thinking maybe I would just go the full length, but I don't want to push my luck too much. Time to fill my perfectly good suspension full of holes. Well, if I ruin it, I guess I'll be upgrading even sooner. Well, 3 hours and 66 holes later, I've got it all drilled out. Yes, I added some to these wheels since I figured they weren't taking the hits from the ground. And also that lever there, because I've seen other suspensions that had those drilled out. So I thought, must be safe enough. Time to see how much weight we shed off of this thing. Stock was 52.4 pounds. And now it is 51.5. Yeah, not even a pound. Hard to say it was worth that much effort. However, I do have a couple more ideas. In a modern snowmobile lineup, the configuration of each model varies like crazy depending on what they're intended for. For instance, a mountain sled won't have any of these idlers on there, and in the back, a lot of them have only got 2 inboard. In fact, some models only have 1 slide rail going down the middle. So I got to thinking, I could remove these idlers, and then if I was going to ride a lot where there wasn't much snow cover, I can easily put them back on. And while it may be a mountain sled thing to do, what if I were to convert it so it just had the 2 inboard back wheels? Riding around on the trails, would that be too hard on the track for some reason and cause it to self-destruct? Well, I guess there's one way to find out. I figured the next step was just to mock it up. And so I've got some more spacers cut up and everything's in its place. So that is what it would be like. I have to admit, it does kind of have that outside wheel fell off kind of a look, but it's getting more and more common these days. And actually Articat ran this configuration on its Firecats a whole bunch. So it's not really that uncommon. So if I'm going to pull the trigger on this, I guess the next step would be to shorten that axle. While I am no machinist, I have seen one before. And I'm pretty sure right now what I need is a lathe, and I don't have one. But I've got an idea. If you are a machinist, you might want to look away. Fortunately, I had a couple extra new bearings from doing idler wheels, so I used them here. Yeah, check that out. I've got the bearing clamp there, and the clamps are screwed into the table so they don't move around. And it's all linked up to my drill, which doesn't have a locking trigger. So we'll just incorporate another clamp. So now, instant lathe. I've got the bulk of the material out of there now. Let's see, getting close. But I don't want to go too far because it's a lot more difficult to put material back in place. I want to sneak up on it. So now I'm going to use a couple of files to sneak up on that size.
Oh, you kind of snuck up on me there.
I am very, very sneaky, sir.
I do believe we're ready to start making some threads. And since I didn't have anything that big, I had to pick up a set. Surprisingly cheap off of Amazon. I don't know how good this is gonna be. I guess we'll give it a shot. The only thing is, my handle from my old set doesn't quite look big enough. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to improvise. Call a guy crazy, but I think that might actually work. There's the original. Looks like the threads mesh. Wow. Oh, can you believe it?
Can you believe it?
Let's see how much all this ridiculousness was worth. Stock weight was 52.4 pounds. Now, 47.4 pounds. Like exactly 5 pounds less. Was it worth the work? I don't know. I guess every little bit adds up. You know what they say about straw breaking a camel in half? All right, let's wrestle this thing in here. Go up. Go. Yeah. All right, I'll get the track up out of the way. Oh, there we go. I'm just gonna get you in the right slot. Come on, one more notch. Ow. Oh, pressure point in my leg. I've never had that before. Oh. Oh. Oh, Lord, help me. Oh, it's starting to go. There. Oh, hallelujah. Oh, my arms. Now, if a person were to gear this thing down, now would be a time to do it. But I'm going to just keep the stock gearing. There it went. There we go. The washer. Click. Not too floppy. Click it. Yeah, perfect. Good. Well, thank you. It is smoother and shinier than stock, isn't it? That's because last year I was stupid enough to sand it all down only to realize it's completely covered up by the exhaust. PTPE. Gotta put some oil in there. All right, let me know when the oil comes out the hole. Yeah, thanks. I see it. There we go. I was shocked when I got this thing and found out how flimsy the running boards are. I mean, look at this. I mean, I'm barely even pushing on them. It's no surprise that one of the common modifications people do to these things is just hack these things right off and then fit some running boards from a late model sled on there. But before I go that far, I'm gonna see what I can do to improve these stock ones. The first modification I'm gonna make is something I think most anybody can do, and that's reinforcing it right here. This upright right here is pretty rigid, and the running board goes right underneath it, but it doesn't fasten to anything until clear inboard to here. Out of there. Come on, work punch. Just gonna bend this washer a little bit so it's more cupped, and it'll hopefully better support the rounded edge of that running board. Yes. Boy, I tell you what, that feels considerably better. And now we have support. Instead of being here, it's all the way out here. So the unsupported side and the better supported side. The next mod we're gonna make will hopefully kill 2 birds with 1 stone, although 1 bird would be really small. That has to do with the buildup of snow and ice on the running boards, and hopefully it'll make them a little bit lighter. A little bit. The idea is to make these little factory holes a little bigger. Now, hopefully we won't lose a lot of strength. I don't think it'll make that much difference because we're gonna dimple die these holes just like the factory already is. Unfortunately, I don't have a 1-inch hole saw, so I'm gonna start with a 3/4 inch. No turning back now. Now I'm just gonna step it up to 1 inch. Now we'll take the male end of the dimple die and stick it through there. We need a good solid foundation for that thing. Get that on there. Here goes. Ow. I think we got it. So hopefully the dimple die will give us a little strength. So with those bends, it's not oil canning and going pop, 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 pop. There is a metal bracket underneath here. That's why we've got these rivets. This triangle will stay stock.
There's something in the water. I feel it taking over me. It's slowly getting harder to breathe.
Well, what do you think? Does that look like my flimsy running boards are going to be even more flimsy? I don't know, it might be. We're going to have to drill out these 2 rivets and move that hinge for the time being until we get that dimpled. I was also wondering if I should put another one right here, because this is kind of the bottom where it's all going to build up. I also noticed, thankfully, before I drilled all of these things out to 1 inch, is that they start getting too close to each other right at this one right here. From here back can be 3/4 inch. Hopefully you professional metal workers aren't cringing too badly watching me work. I am beating the crap out of this die with a hammer, so I'm going to experiment a little bit. I've got some big C-clamps. I've got it oiled down really good to give me maximum strength. I don't know if this is going to be enough. Actually, it feels like it's doing something. Gosh, this would be way better than whacking it with a hammer. I didn't even have to try that hard. Oh, it definitely stopped. Did it work? Ah-ha-ha! That did a much better job. The clamp, that made a nice even one. Oh, that's way better. And look at how the hole isn't all banged up from the thing bouncing around getting hammered. That's how we learn stuff. We experiment. I gotta say, I've kind of got mixed feelings. It looks a little random in its pattern. A lot random, actually. So the stock holes are these forward. And I think that's what kind of makes it kind of random looking, and working around this brace underneath. Going back with all the additional holes, I tried to make the same spacing between these two stock ones and tried to continue that through here and following the edge of the running board. These 4 up here I added, and I just spaced them evenly between these. But even with that somewhat rhyme and reason, it still looks kind of weird. So if I had to do it over again, instead of this pattern, I think I would do this instead. So here are all the holes in 3/4 inch instead of 1 inch. And then on the other side, I started staggering the holes here. And instead of doing that, so these are stock locations right here, I would continue putting them parallel with each other. Another handy tool for doing jobs like this is to have this deburring tool. Although I'm not making a lot of engine mods, I do want to make the most with what I've got. And I noticed that the air intake for this thing is right here. So it's sucking in surprisingly warm air underneath the hood. And warm air doesn't make as much power as cold, dense air. So this is no good. I decided I'm going to try to make a cold air intake out of this. What we have here is a 2-inch 45-degree conduit elbow. I believe they use these things to put electrical wires in a commercial building. Should be able to pick one up at any old hardware store. Ooh. The idea, of course, is to attach that conduit onto our intake and come up through this hood cowling thing, and then put a pod filter tucked in right behind our windscreen right here to protect it from snow, and yet able to suck all sorts of nice, dense, cold air. Now, a tricky part is figuring out where to come through this cowling. So I just sighted it down looking from this angle and coming around to the front, and figured that this should be the general area where we want to make our hole. And if you're wondering how I made these markings, I used a Stabilo pencil. I usually get them in white and blue. I use the white on the dark stuff. You can see on the running boards I use blue on the light colored stuff. What's really cool about these pencils is that they're basically just wax, and when you're done with your markings, you can just lick your finger and wipe it off. Hopefully your finger isn't as muddy as mine. Yeah.
And I don't know what's happening. How did it come to this? Saw danger on your lips.
There are these tabs on the airbox that I'm choosing to delete. It just took me a little bit to figure out how.
Bare hands. Ha ha ha. Sayonara. Now, in order to make this diameter the same to the intake of the airbox, I had to sand this down. I just used the old rinky-dink belt sander and the vise trick. And I just held it along like this and just worked it around until I got the wall thickness down to somewhere around there. Look at this. Fits in there awfully nice.
And now just to trim off a little bit. It's like this conduit was made for the Phazer. There's hardly any waste.
Got me paranoid. Love that I can avoid. Your kiss tastes like poison.
Because this wall thickness has gotten so thin, I'm afraid that there's not enough strength there to clamp against to hold it into the airbox. So I'm going to take this little scrap and just stick it in here to give it a little more strength. Because I want to put a clamp around here to hold down the snorkel, I need to remove this little tab right here, and there's one on that side too. I'm just going to go old school and do this by hand. That's actually not bad. There, I got a hose clamp on it now. Tell you what, that thing feels real solid. That was not bad at all. Talk about cheap too.
To keep the snow out, I used a foam unifilter with a pre-filter to keep the snow from sticking to it. Of course, I've got a link for these in the description of the video.
And now to wrestle this thing back in there. Higher, Todd. Ouch! Right in the back. Come on, thread in there, you little bugger. Come over. Oh, come on. Your buddy went in there easy enough. Oh, now you're low? Well, make up your mind. Oh, there we go. All right, now thread in there. Don't cross thread now. Impact time. Yeah, I need a swivel. Hey. There we go. Yep, just a little bit. Yes. Who's winning? This guy. Come on. There we go. Oh, for crying out loud. Now, another thing that needs to be addressed is the whole lack of a headlight. Since I deleted the original, you know what? Maybe we should see how much this thing weighs. 4.4 pounds. I tell you what I am going to use is a lot lighter than that. Now, from what I've seen, a lot of the Phazer fanatics run some sort of LED light bar on the handlebars, but they also have zero windscreen. Mine is right smack in the road. When building my XTTR Dual Sport, I came across these driving lights that worked really well. They're really bright, lightweight, inexpensive, and they've held up just great so far. I'll put a link for them in the description of the video. Red must be high beam. Oh, yeah, that'll do. I'll be using the mounts that come with the lights, but because of where I'm putting them, I'll have to cut them and bend them just a little. It is pretty incredible how well these lights fit down into here. So there's a big Phillips bolt holding the nose cone on here, and that's what we're going to use to mount the light. Now when the hood closes, the headlight will come and just barely clear the bumper and interferes just a little bit right here in this plastic. So we're just going to trim off a little bit. There we are, headlights are mounted. I would have preferred to have them mounted further back in there so you can't see them so much. Not that they're that bad looking, but having them further inboard made it trickier for mounting. Another thing to consider is proximity to the exhaust. And I suppose you could probably get away with just running the wires up and over here, but it seems problematic. So my thought was to put them through as close to the hinge as possible. To connect the wires, I'm going to use these solder and seal connectors. Now we're going to put some shrink tubing over those wires. And now before we run the wires through our little hole, I'm going to put a little grommet in there. Wow, is that factory? I forget. This part is not going to look factory. And I'm just going to gob in some silicone. Come on. Now, of course, the wiring that comes with the lighting isn't long enough to go all the way underneath the engine and then up to the chassis harness. And yes, they are extended with much heavier gauge wire. To be honest, I'm doing pretty good, just that my extensions are the right color. We're getting serious now. Now, before I go any further, might as well test these things out, just in case I miss something. Now, these lights have an amber low beam, which is kind of European and weird around here, but whatever. Red, yeah, and low beam. High beam, low beam. High beam, low beam. I think that'll work. Now, wiring the lights into the chassis harness is really pretty straightforward. Originally, it had wires going up to the original headlight. I've just got that sub harness routed down here, the plug right here. Now all we have to do is put these little spade terminals on the ends of the wires and plug the red wire for high beam into there, yellow for low beam right here, and black for ground right there. It's probably a good idea to put this wiring in some sort of wire loom protection. I really like this stuff. It's split right here. So if you have like a big plug-in and you can't slip it all over it, you can just pop it through here. I also have this mess that just unwound out of the package. Doggone it. This is not split because if you have a lot of wires in there, sometimes they can pop out of the split. And check this out. It can expand to a whole bunch of wires. Boing. You can just cut it with the scissors and then melt the tip with a lighter or something so it doesn't continue to fray. That's a little better. There, got them all plugged in and zip tied up. Now we'll just tuck them up here behind that new snorkel.
At this point, it was time to wrap things up with some custom graphics. Now, I'll be the first to admit this is not exactly a race sled, but like most of my projects, I just had to go with that kind of a look. Pleased to report that after bottoming hard off of my small jumps, my suspension is still holding up just fine, and in typical fashion I've already lined up another part snowmobile with a little better suspension. And wouldn't you know it, I nabbed up another Phazer as well. And though it may be a tad rough around the edges,
Jeez. Little bugger, come here you.
I actually got it running halfway decent. And since the suspension on this one is completely locked up, I figure it's a perfect candidate for a long track, and we could compare it to the white one. Speaking of which, I wouldn't mind finding a cheap performance exhaust for this thing as well. What would you guys like to see? Let me know in the comments, because I'd really appreciate the input. And maybe you'll see your idea on the next video, right here on 1 Mile More.